Welcome, everybody, to the August 2023 version of Streets for All Happy Hour. We're very excited to have Metrolink CEO Darren Kettle with us as our special guest. Before we get to our conversation with Darren, we're going to give you an update on our efforts in Sacramento, talk about a new bike lane on Forest Lawn Drive, announce a new project called Marina Central Park, give you an update on our ballot measure, and go over a few wins and fails. Our icebreaker is, what is your favorite rail experience you've had? It could be anywhere in the world, and why was it your favorite rail experience? I'm going to turn it over to Mark to answer that question and give us an update on state.
Hey everyone, Mark Fuksovich, him, Director of State Policy for Streets for All. My favorite rail experience, so you guys are going to hear about the legislature soon enough and how the legislature was just on recess. And so that means I got to take a little vacation too, where my partner and I took the Southwest Chief, the Amtrak, from Fullerton all the way to Chicago. And it was a joy, it was a delight. I recommend the sleeper car. The food's pretty solid. And it was really great to disconnect in places that had like very little cell service at times. So highly recommend it. Ask me about it, DM me. Yeah, it was great. Next slide. So like I said, the legislature, it has just come back right now from recess. And where we are within the legislative process is between some bills are on the floor of their second house and some bills are in appropriations on the suspense file. And so we're kind of in just like I said, just got off of recess. And so we're right kind of in that kind of middle stage, about 2/3 or 3/4 of the way until we hit the governor's desk. So next slide. So as a reminder, if folks have seen this before, Streets for All this year, of the 1,000 bills in the legislature, 1,600 or so, Streets for All has 11 sponsored bills in the legislature, 10 of which have survived until now. I'll just going to highlight 3 of my personal favorites. AB 1317 from Wendy Carrillo that unbundles the cost of parking from the cost of rent. So that's trying to get people out of cars. If you don't use parking, why should you pay for it? AB 413 by Assemblymember Lee is daylights crosswalks, which means it stops cars from parking right in front of the crosswalk so that you can be seen. It's like a pedestrian safety bill, and that's really great. And lastly, a lot of people's favorite topic is highway widening. What SB 695 does from Senator Gonzalez is require Caltrans to report its data, report its greenhouse gas emissions effects, reports the VMT effects of its highway widening and how many miles it's done. So those are my 3 favorite bills. Next slide. But if you want to help, all of these bills are really important. So the first thing you can do to help is contact your legislator. And even if you just like find who your legislator is and say, like, you don't even need to know our bills, and say, hey, Legislator X, support Streets for All's bills. That helps Streets for All get a lot more legitimacy within Sacramento. And that really matters. And it really makes a difference. If you're part of an organization, I know that there are folks on this call right now who represent other organizations, send in a letter of support to the legislature, to your legislator, or to one of the committees. That's incredibly helpful. You can join the state team. While I'm the staff member in charge of state policy, we have, I think, 25 right now active volunteers within 3 sub-teams who help me out on comms, on policy analysis, and on advocacy as well. Donate to the Streets for All, the state advocacy work. That's really important stuff. So make sure you can donate if you want to. That funds our work. It funds trips to Sacramento, and that's incredibly valuable. And lastly, little precursor, in about a few weeks now, I'm going to be emailing out a This Ought to Be a Law Google form, where if you have an idea for a law that can go into place next year, we want to solicit that idea and get that from you. So we're going to send out that Google form in a few weeks. On to Olga.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. So if you get our emails, you probably saw us send out a really cool update about Forest Lawn Drive. If you biked on it recently, it's just a bare bike lane. Nithia's office is going to upgrade the section from Zoo Drive to Avon Street to be a protected lane, which is incredible because the current iteration is terrifying. They're going to remove a vehicle traffic lane. And Michael, could you show how it'll look? So with only 1 car in each direction, it's going to be much safer for people trying to get to Griffith Park. If you have not filled out the survey we circulated, you still can. I'm just going to drop the URL in the chat momentarily. Please do let them know you support this. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it back over to Michael.
Thanks, Olga. My favorite train experience I've had was in Shanghai. I took what I think is the world's only operational maglev train, and it took about 8 minutes and it went over 200 miles per hour to go from the airport into the city, and it was amazing. So really excited about Marina Central Park. If you have not seen our announcement on social media, we are trying to replace the 90 freeway with something better. The 90 freeway was built in the 1960s. It was supposed to be a 50-mile long freeway from Lincoln Boulevard, State Route 1, all the way to the 91 in Anaheim. And the other 47 miles never got built due to community opposition. So what we're left with is this 3-mile stub that really doesn't serve anybody well. And it's the kind of thing that if the freeway didn't exist, there wouldn't be demand to build a 3-mile long freeway. We've done an analysis of traffic counts, and you can see compared to every other freeway in the county, the 90 is barely a blip, both at rush hour and non-rush hour, just daily averages. And freeway has separated the neighborhood of Delray. All the runoff from the freeway, it's so close to the ocean goes into Biona Creek and Centinela Creek, and that goes directly out to the Pacific Ocean. And of course, it's an air quality issue, and we have a housing shortage. So our vision for this space is to rethink it, put in 4,000 units of affordable housing, a bus rapid transit corridor that would connect Lincoln Boulevard, which has a BRT line scheduled in the future, to Sepulveda, which has a train line to the airport scheduled in the future. You could still drive through it if you needed to. There'd just be fewer lanes, bike trails, and make the creek accessible again. Here is a 30-second long video that just sort of goes into it in a little bit more detail. And right now, there's a really mature forest on either side of the freeway. So we'd want to hang on to that. But instead of all this concrete, we would want it to be 4,000 units of housing, a lot more trees, one of LA County's largest parks, bus rapid transit, bike trails, and just a beautiful space to hang out, grab a bite, or live in. We're calling this Marina Central Park, and we are so excited about it. It would be the first freeway in California to come down just on its own volition, not because of an earthquake or anything like that happened with the Embarcadero Freeway. Right now, we are in the process of applying for grants to do the feasibility study. It would cost about $2 million. We're applying for a federal Reconstructing Communities grant next month, and we're hopefully going to partner on that with Caltrans. And then we are applying for a state Reconnecting Communities grant, also due next month, hopefully with the city of Culver City. So I'm really excited about that. Also want to give everyone a quick update on our ballot measure, Healthy Streets LA. This is on the March 2024 ballot for the city of Los Angeles. We're so happy to announce that we have raised over $2 million for the campaign. The campaign is going to be a mix of digital ads, billboards, texting, door-to-door, you name it, we're doing it all. Our polling is really positive and shows this is likely to pass, but we still have to work for it. We're in the process of building out our coalition and our campaign team. And if you want to stay up to date, sign up at healthystreetsla.com. And if you want to work with us on this, please reach out. I am going to pass it over to Katrina.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everyone. I have to say that my favorite rail experience that I ever had was the overnight sleeper express train from New Delhi to Mumbai. This is summer 2018. Although I have many, many fond memories of taking, commuter rail and then, longer haul rail throughout the state and then up and down the West Coast. I'm here to talk about some of our wins of the month to start. Our big one is that you might have seen us not only online, but IRL at tabling at various events around the city between the last time we talked and now. A couple of big ones were the Venice Boulevard Explore the Corridor event on Sunday, July 23rd. We've got some exclusive merch from that that's still available for a limited time only. So get it now on our site. In addition, we also sent folks to table at Bridgefest, which was on the 6th Street Viaduct in downtown LA. And both of these events created really wonderful, pedestrian plazas for a temporary time. You get to connect with a lot of people who are really engaged in mobility and accessibility and transportation. And it was wonderful to see many of your faces. So stay tuned for future events. We were going to table at Ciclavia, but of course, we all know what happened there. But we'll see you again in person soon. I'm going to turn it over to Josh.
Thank you, Katrina. One of the most memorable rail experiences I have is taking the train to Sicily. And for anyone that doesn't know, you're on the train and then you get to the coast and they actually load the train onto a ferry and then take the ferry, like take the train on a boat across to the island of Sicily, and then unload it, and then it gets back on the train line. I'm going to give a quick update on protected bike lane progress. We just did a quick sort of check on the data of protected bike lanes installed in the city of Los Angeles, and over 1/3 of them are due to repaving projects, which if you're familiar with our ballot measure, you're familiar with. But this is an initiative that Streets for All started during the pandemic. And so we're partially, if not like largely responsible for about 1/3 of all protected bike lanes that's currently installed in the city of Los Angeles, which is very exciting.
Awesome. And then I realized I totally forgot to answer the icebreaker. I studied abroad in Tokyo in college, so my answer has to be the Shinkansen. Those of you who've taken it, if you know, you know why it's amazing. I'm going to give a quick update on a beef we have with LAPD now. You may have noticed some of their posts lately talking about increased driver pedestrian collaboration on all of their social media platforms. It's ridiculous, and we're about to show you a video explaining why we are upset about this. Michael, would you start the video?
Your loved ones are counting.
So first of all, has a cop ever saved a pedestrian this way? No. The other major thing that we are very confused about is the fact that this person has a walk signal in this video, and LAPD is making it look like it is their fault that they are being hit by a driver running a red light. For the many of us here who have ever been hit by a car, especially in a circumstance like this, you know that that's total bullshit. So we are not happy about this. We're going to keep yelling at them, and we encourage you to keep yelling at them too.
Over to you, Kyle.
All right, thanks, Michael and Olga. I wish I had an example for an icebreaker that was as cool as the Shinkansen. It's always been something that was on my bucket list. Mine is simpler. Just I had an internship outside Chicago one time in college, and I got to take the metro all the way out to a suburb, and just being able to commute and ride the train for an extended period of time was always fun for me, because I got to do so much work before I actually got to work. Not that that's how you should use the time, but it was cool for me. Really simple, but I don't know why I remember it so fondly like that. But we're happy to end on a win where we are excited about getting La Brea bus lanes. If you've been tracking us over the past couple of years, you know that we've been shouting about it for that long. So we're really happy to see it in the ground. We do have a portion that's on hold in CD10, and so we're encouraging the council member there, Heather Hutt, to continue to rally support and get the feedback from the community so that we can get the full project all the way down to the E-line. And lucky for you, you'll be seeing her next next month in happy hour to preview our preview slide. So stay tuned for any updates there to engage, look for call to actions, and yeah, go ride the bus on La Brea. On to Michael to close us off before we get to our guest.
Thanks, Kyle. We have some seasonal merch out. So this is going to be gone by the end of the summer. It's about the Venice Short Line, which existed 100 years ago along Venice Boulevard. So you can check it out. Every purchase does support us. Volunteer, follow us on social media. streetsforall.org/get-involved. As Kyle just mentioned, we're excited to have Councilmember Hutt on, and that will be Wednesday, September 13th at 5 p.m. So I am so excited to welcome our special guest, Darren Kettle. Darren is the Chief Executive Officer of Metrolink, which is Southern California's regional passenger rail service that provides a safe, easy, and affordable and stress-free alternative to car travel for more than 18 million residents of the 6-county mega region. He became Metrolink CEO in September 2021. Prior to that, he was the executive director of the Ventura County Transportation Commission for 14 years. Prior to that, he was with the San Bernardino Associated Governments. And prior to that, he worked with both Sandbag and the Riverside County Transportation Commission. Welcome, Darren, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Michael, and it's my pleasure. So if I could, I'm going to steal your icebreaker, if that's all right. And I promise you, it's I can tell you a lot of stories about my trains, and at some point maybe I will over the course of this chat. My train experience was now it's about 12 years ago. My wife, we're a blended family, and so my wife had taken her kids to Paris. And I couldn't go at the time, so she went with her kids to Paris, and I flew in a little bit later. I flew into Paris, and I had to take the subway system to get to downtown Paris, where at a mall my wife met me, where we then took the subway further to the Gare du Nord station, and we took the TGV from Paris to the south of France. So great experience to take the high-speed rail. She brought French wine, some French cheese, a baguette. I don't sleep on airplanes, so I was exhausted. But my experience of that whole thing, it was sort of my own little rom-com type of opportunity of meeting in Paris and taking the TGV to Avignon and Arles, where we just hung out and drank French wine and ate bread and cheese and butter. So there's my story, a little bit about my train story, and of course I'll talk to you a little bit more about it. So first of all, yes, thanks for the introduction, Michael. I have been in this role for it'll be 2 years in September. I'm a lifelong Southern Californian. As you can sort of tell from my bio, what is not included in my bio is sort of the level of history I have with Metrolink. I started my career in the very early 90s, not knowing I wanted to go into transportation, but I found myself in it. I worked for a small city out in the San Bernardino County area, the city of Rialto. And one of the very first projects that I did, I was working in the redevelopment agency, back when redevelopment was a thing in California back in the 90s. And one of my very first projects was being the project manager for the construction of this new crazy concept of a commuter rail station in the city of Rialto. I was the city of Rialto's project manager for the construction of the city of Rialto's commuter rail station in 1993. So I started very early in my life with a connection to Metrolink. I then became a user of the system when I worked for SCAG for 4.5 years, and I lived in San Bernardino. And took the train from San Bernardino to downtown, and took the subway. And then you mentioned the work I did in San Bernardino, but then I was with the Ventura County Transportation Commission and was one of the 5 county member agencies of Metrolink. And when I say member agencies, they're also our funding agencies. And so I also had the experience of working with Metrolink in that capacity as a member. And so I have a lot of familiarity with a long history of Southern Californian commuter rail and how Metrolink is what it is today, 30 years later from it when it was first established. So that's a little bit of the background. And I know we want to spend a lot of time on questions. So just by way of a little bit more, we're a 7-line system. We serve 6 counties. And 545 route miles of commuter rail. I'm going to use that term very infrequently because I'm not using commuter rail anymore. We're calling it regional passenger rail because our world has so significantly changed. We're the 3rd largest regional passenger system in the country as far as route miles. So we serve a massive region. Everybody knows the size of Southern California. And we have, we've been providing this service in pre-pandemic. We had nearly 40,000 daily boardings. We had aspirations for being far better than that, given Southern California's population. But then, then March 15th, 2020 happened and our world fundamentally changed. And we cut 2/3 of our service, but we lost 90% of our riders because everybody was staying home unless they were essential workers. And so it has taken some time. A little over a year ago, we brought back about 2/3 of the service that we had cut. We are still, though, at ridership numbers that are significantly below pre-pandemic numbers. We did, you heard it here first. We had a record day yesterday with our highest ridership since the pandemic, 19,654 boardings, which other than Earth Day, which was free wherever you wanted to ride, was our highest ridership date since the pandemic started. And so there was a good news story. We've got we've got our adopted budget. We've got a lot of different projects that are underway to try to. I'm generally not going to say ridership recovery. Again, we're right now at less than 50% of pre-pandemic ridership, and and because of the nature of how the world is so fundamentally changed, if we just talk about recovery, that can be a very depressing conversation because it's going to take a long time for us to get to numbers that were, double than what we have today. Particularly in the fact, as I opened, I live in Camarillo. I'm a regular user of our system. And part of I don't think I mentioned this to the whole group, but so not only am I the CEO, I'm also a customer. I board our trains in Camarillo and use our trains on a regular basis to get into downtown LA today. But if I'm doing that as the CEO of Metrolink, the nature of our business is so significantly changed that we have to recognize that we can't duck that issue. And so, but what we then need to address is, okay, well, how do we make sure these investments, the tax dollars are that we receive are doing the right things? And so that is causing us to shift our business model, and you will be seeing that over the course of the next year to try to make that happen, to go back to this model of not being a 9-to-5 commuter railroad, but being a regional passenger system that supports all trips. I can tell you a story yesterday morning. I was really excited. I mentioned the fact that we had these great numbers. I was on my train and at the Northridge station, I think, or maybe it was Van Nuys, in walked 9 students. So I think part of the reason ridership went up a little bit yesterday was because school's back in session. But I was able to, one of the things that we're hoping that we plan to start September 5th is a pilot program that any college student, high school student, trade school student, community college student will, with a valid ID, be able to board our trains for free. There will be no cost to college students or high school students. So I will close with this, and then I'll open it up to questions. That program, which we're super excited about, we're going to have it available both through our ticket vending machines that are at our platforms, but also through our mobile app. So I was watching these kids on the train. They sat real near me. They don't know who I am, but I walked up to them and I said, okay, so I work for Metrolink. I didn't tell them what I did. I just simply said I worked for Metrolink. And I said, I see that you're using the app. Do you buy round trip tickets? Do you buy monthly passes? What is your fare product? And I was really surprised to see these are regular students. They say, well, I buy every day. I buy a round trip ticket. I said, well, you don't buy a monthly pass? Then nope. How about a 7-day pass or our flex passes that allows people to use the trains on different days if they have a schedule that requires flexibility? No, they buy round trip tickets or one-way tickets. And so that was a real shocker to me. But then I thought, hold on, these are high school kids and college kids, so maybe they're not necessarily wired just yet to be doing long-term planning. Because I'm thinking back when I was 18, did I really think that much about it? Maybe some do, but nonetheless, this is the fare product that they purchase. So I said, well, we're looking at launching this program, and so stay tuned. It'll be available both through the app as well as at the ticket vending machines. And you could just see these eyes light up. And they were high school students that are at a charter school at Cal State LA. So they board our trains on the Ventura County line and then go to a San Bernardino County line train to go to Cal State LA. So they have to do the transfer. And as I'm sitting behind them, and I hear one of the kids say, wow, that program will be great. That'll save me $150 a month. That alone was what made me so excited about this program. Is it's real, it's tangible for young people. And if hopefully it opens up this notion that you'll be able to take the train, whether they're commuting to school or they're just going on some sort of adventure. So I'm excited about that program. We have other things that we're doing related to a relaunch of what we call our Mobility for All program. That program provides anybody with an EBT card a 50% discount on every fare product we have, whether it's a monthly pass or a one-way ticket. So again, it really goes to the nature of making sure that we are providing mobility and people are not priced out of an ability to take the train. So that's also a pilot project we've had underway for about 6 months. And we're continuing to see growth in that program as well. So Michael, they're sort of, just spitballing everything there. Hopefully I covered some stuff. There's a lot of cool things that we talk about. We've got Olga mentioned SCORE and the need for us to finish our SCORE program, $2.5 billion infrastructure package so that we have more frequency throughout Southern California in our train system. Obviously, LA 28 is a big deal. We're excited about being the backbone transit system for the LA 28 Olympic and Paralympic Games. It is an exciting time to be in this business. There are a lot of things that keep me awake at night, but it is never a dull moment. I will close with saying we had a hurricane and an earthquake on Sunday, and our system handled it just perfectly, no issues. Even in San Clemente stayed where it belongs. It did not fall into the Pacific Ocean with our tracks. That was a good news story. So a lot of things to be excited about, a lot of work ahead of us. Getting the funding is going to be a critical issue for us. Great work on your part for your ballot measure that's going to raise resources in the city of Los Angeles for more bike activity. We're in the same boat, needing to really pursue additional funding for both capital projects and long-term operations.
Thank you, Darren.
I've rambled enough. I'll let you guys take it.
No, it's actually so funny because my first question to you is going to be about how the pandemic disrupted travel patterns and what Metrolink is doing to adapt. So you answered it perfectly. So I'm actually going to go on to my second question.
Sure.
Metrolink is obviously at a massive inflection point right now. Metro itself, for me, when I first rode Metro 15 years ago, that system is unrecognizable compared to the one today. But Metrolink has largely been left out of the sales tax measure funding that helped Metro accelerate the development of that system. I know, obviously, there's still limited hours, long headways, and the COVID recovery is ongoing. So beyond, the obvious things like SCORE, which we may ask you more about, what do you think Metrolink needs at this moment to really modernize the system to meet the moment? And what are some of your own short-term and long-term future goals for Metrolink outside of, the stuff you talked about?
Thanks, Olga. One of the challenges that Metrolink has always had, and will have, I think, going forward, is the fact that we do not have our own dedicated revenue stream. We get fare revenue from our riders, but that's a relatively small dollar amount. And we get a little bit of federal funding for state of good repair and some modest operations dollars. But after that, a big part of my job is going to 5 counties with my little tin cup and asking for resources to run our system. And we are a federally recognized FRA regulated railroad. We operate in a very complex and complicated environment. And I think that one of the biggest challenges we have, and we got some good news out of the state budget, where transit dollars were brought in thanks to the leadership of the California Transit Association and some key legislators. But I think one of the things that we struggle with is the fact that we don't have that dedicated revenue stream. And so we have a lot of people looking over our shoulder. Now, in the case of Metro, there is a small carve out for commuter rail in Measure M. But that's one county. And the other 4 counties, of course, my home county, Ventura, doesn't even have a sales tax measure. The other 3 counties only generally have the funding for capital projects, not operating. And what we've experienced now is, if we think about it, the fact that we are down by more than 50% of our fare-paying customers, we're down 50% of the revenues that came with that. That translates to $4 to $5 million every month in cash that we are not seeing that we used to see before. So it adds to that complexity. So a big part of what I am having to do right now is work with our 5 counties and work to and again, they question how much do we continue to invest in Metrolink, given ridership numbers being where they are. And so my push has been, I don't want us to be a burden on the 5 counties. The state has very admirable goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing vehicle miles traveled, making sure we have access to affordable housing. We have equity needs, mobility needs from an equity perspective. We serve disadvantaged communities. So if the state has all these goals, the state should be ponying up. And so a big push of what we're trying to do is really make that case that the state needs to step up and support operations that have a direct, are directly related to some of these state goals. So I think those are the things that we're looking at as far as our, my hope, my ultimate, where I think we should go, is it relates to pivoting away from this structure that we've had as a commuter rail agency and implementing more regular all day throughout the day service, more night service, that kind of thing. And we're going to be able to do that with some just getting more efficiency out of our fleet and our crews. Right now we run trains at the peak and then our crews and our trains are idle. And we can use those, I think we can use those better. It does come at a bit of a cost, but that is how we're going to grow ridership, is by making sure there's more service. I mean, people say, well, what's the best way to how are we going to grow ridership? We need more trains. We need to operate throughout the day. We need to operate into the evening. And we're going to be, it's not completely official yet, but we're working very closely with LA Metro, that in late October, we are going to be taking our Antelope Valley line very much in that direction, where we're going to have more all-day service and into the evening service, with actually a train that leaves Los Angeles right around 11 o'clock and gets into Lancaster at 12:45 past midnight. But that's the kind of service that we've not seen, and so we're hoping this is going to be a real test of Southern California about how we do that.
Thank you, Darren. Over to Mark, and just in the interest of time, because we also have a lot of audience questions. We love all the detail. We know you have a heart out because you need to catch your own Metrolink.
I've just Michael, just so you know, I just took CEO privilege, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to catch the Amtrak train. So we'll have a little bit more time.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Mark Vuksovich. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you again. So my question's around electrification. So battery and hydrogen trains don't seem ready to be fully replaced, with repeated failures on tests across the world and across the country on those technologies, especially with hydrogen. Metrolink's fleet of diesel trains really should meet zero emission requirements, but also the service potential of electrification. And so what work has been done on electrification, and would Metrolink consider traditional overhead catenary electrification like Caltrain and like train systems around the world if money were available to do so?
So Mark, I think if money were available to do so, so let me step back real quick. So we have just purchased in the last 5 years the F-125 Tier 4 locomotives. They're the cleanest burning diesel locomotives in the world. We power those with renewable fuel, not with petroleum diesel. We're one of the few railroads in the world that does that. So we're doing our part as it relates to emissions reduction. It doesn't go all the way because we're operating on our system. So there's a bit of a there's a longer answer to that. If money were an object, I think we would entertain the notion of electrification with our next fleet upgrade. I mean, right now we operate a fleet of 55 locomotives, 40 of them brand new Tier 4s, based on the fact that we operate in a Southern California environment that deals with freight railroads, Amtrak. We don't, in some cases, some of the right of way we own, some of the right of way we don't own. So we're having to look at how we work with BNSF or Union Pacific. So it's a very different environment than what Caltrain has, which owns that corridor, and for all intents and purposes only runs their trains. We operate in a way different kind of environment. That said, the only other issue that might be related to challenges associated with overhead catenary systems, and we experience this as out in Redlands, where we have the new Aero service, the multiple unit service that runs from San Bernardino to Redlands. The community outcry about overhead catenary for that being considered to be electrified was so strong that SBCTA at the time said, okay, fine, we're going to see if we come up with a different zero emission kind of technology, which then caused them to do the study that said, oh, do we do battery electric or do we hydrogen? And why we're going to test the hydrogen train out there next year. I mean, the hydrogen chain is in Pueblo, Colorado right now, or is supposed to be en route to it. It was having trouble getting out of Galveston, Texas, because it was being shipped. And but ultimately, we are going to be piloting the first in the U.S. hydrogen multiple unit. All those issues you raised, Mark, are real. That's why we test these things, and we'll see where that takes us. But money has always been a big object for us. And then the other issue is just the nature of community concerns. And that's never a simple thing to get through. And, Caltrain had advantages going in on this that at this point we don't have, but I don't ever slam the door on anything at this point because you never know where there might be an opportunity.
Thanks so much. I'll take the next question, which is about the incipient Las Vegas high-speed rail. And we're very excited and curious about the prospect of the private Brightline West high-speed rail connecting Los Angeles metro area to Las Vegas. And we're curious, what are your thoughts on the project and what improvements to Metrolink do you anticipate planning for to ensure a quick and seamless connection between two different systems at Rancho Cucamonga Union Station?
Katrina, so just about an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, I spoke with Sarah Watterson, the president of Brightline West. We speak regularly. We have two different memorandums of understanding with Brightline West because they're going to be on parts of our corridor. We're working very, very closely with coordination at the Rancho Cucamonga station, and where they're going to come in from Las Vegas, and our trains already are, where we have literally we won't have cross-platform, but you're going to go down one level, and you'll go or up one level from our trains to Brightline trains. We're looking at integrated ticketing. We are already looking at schedules that correspond with what Brightline will come in with at least the start of their service, where we allow for a 15-minute transfer period between where our train comes in at a Rancho Cucamonga station, generally from LAUS, and a 15-minute transfer to go up one level to go then get on a Brightline train. We're looking at some things where we have to modify how we do business. Our cars were not set up for luggage. We're a commuter railroad. So how do we look at we're right now in the middle of a major car refurbishment for our oldest passenger cars in our system that date back to the early 90s. We are now making sure we have space for luggage that we did not have before, because people go to Vegas, they're going to have luggage. so there are already those types of things where we're, and the Rancho Cucamonga station design it's conceptual at this point, but it's better than conceptual because it shows how it can work. And the biggest thing is going to be making sure that it's an easy transfer. And with integrated ticketing, that won't be an issue from that perspective. And the biggest challenge will just be making sure that people know how to, get off our trains, go up the level, and then jump on the Brightline West trains.
I think I have the next one. So we've spent a lot of energy looking at CEQA and NEPA and making sure that these really well-intentioned laws don't unnecessarily burden good things we want to see happen, like new transit lines. As you likely know, bus and bike projects are now exempt from CEQA. Do you think it would be a good idea to focus on making rail projects exempt, especially in urban areas? And how much do CEQA and NEPA slow Metrolink down from expanding or making system improvements? And are there any other state laws that you think if this was changed or this was done, it would be helpful to Metrolink?
Well, from a Metrolink perspective, in most cases for us, I mean, sometimes we'll take the lead on projects, Michael, and sometimes our member agencies do. And so it varies about who's going to take the lead on a project. A lot of times, more often than not, if it's a project that's happening with the existing rail corridor and it's track expansion or something like that, I don't see CEQA necessarily being a real challenge. There's always those issues of, I saw somebody pop in the chat something about NIMBY issues. We do have to wrestle with NIMBY related matters in various parts of Southern California. And so we really count on our member agencies sort of because they're the best connected to be able to work with those local issues. So we generally lean on them to deliver, our SCORE program is massive. And so we have sometimes gotten pushback, and we have to play that out, working with our member agencies because they're the ones that have to wrestle with that at the local level. We have typically not gotten too involved in, we'll do some environmental clearance, but I've not really seen CEQA be an impediment for us. And where our member agencies have had to wrestle with it, there are some things where we look at it and go, boy, it would be nice if we could move these projects along without some of the impacts that just CEQA brings to it. But it's not been something that is as directly related to us.
Thank you. Over to Josh for our final question before we open up to the audience. Josh?
Josh,
We caught him in the middle of a bite.
It says you're not muted, but we can't hear you. It's like you're muted.
Okay. Josh, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we
go
can
for
hear
it.
you.
All right. I have a question about the Surfliner. For anyone that doesn't know, the Los San corridor between LA and San Diego is the second highest ridership regional rail corridor in the nation. Metrolink's one of a bunch of different operators on that corridor, including Amtrak and Freight, and the line needs significant upgrades. And part of it is falling into the sea. High-speed rail eventually is going to be on it. So this is sort of a two-part question because it's also tied to the top audience question right now. But what governance changes do we need to make to intergovernmental and interagency corridors like Los San to perform effectively? Is there some sort of combined agency or different level of oversight? And then the follow-up question to this is, do you think specifically the Los San tracks in San Clemente and Del Mar can be moved inland so that they don't fall into the ocean? I think we're all thankful that they didn't during the most recent hurricane.
So I'll answer the second question first. I think there are opportunities to move, as lovely as the train ride is right along the Pacific Ocean, and it's gorgeous. It does have its issues, and we experienced that in a couple different cases. I mean, one of the questions came up earlier about if we were to electrify, if money wasn't an issue. And I think the big thing is money it's an issue. High-speed rail will likely never run on that corridor, but our trains could run faster, and Surfliner trains could certainly run faster. South of Fullerton, or south of Anaheim, would be our trains or Surfliner trains. So Yes, I think that there are those opportunities to do that if resources can be found, and certainly state is putting a lot of money into rail, high-speed rail being the best example of that. So I think that there are those opportunities to do it, but it is in the multi-billions of dollars worth of work to make that happen, whether it's in San Clemente or it's in Del Mar. I mean, when we're talking about the Del Mar stuff is something on the order of 3 to 5 billion, I think probably numbers like that for a tunnel. San Clemente, not probably that different. And then you have to completely build a whole new corridor down the I-5. That's big money. And right now, generally speaking, we have just as a country, we've not done that level of investment. I mean, it's amazing what the IIJA has done to rail. It's the single greatest amount of rail infrastructure investment our country has seen in over 50 years. And still, it's not anywhere near enough when you look at this. And it doesn't help that the Northeast corridor is getting a huge chunk of it. And we have to really battle to try to get our fair share here on the West Coast. To your second question related to governance issues, this is that's a challenging one. We operate in a structure that we exist today. I talked about our sheer size. I have a staff of 280 staff. We maintain tracks on the order of 545 miles. I've got over 1,000 contract employees. When you look at the full family, the full Metrolink family is 1,200 people. But we are the major railroad in Southern California. We do have the LOSAN structure that's there. That was a joint powers authority that started 12 years ago. It used to be under state authority or state responsibility. So they were looking for local control. I don't know that the way we are set up today is the best way long term. I think that there are elected leaders that are looking at other ways to maybe set this up. But for now, for us, given the challenge of the network, and you talk about we're the railroad, right? But that 3 mile the stretch that goes from in our territory, it's all generally it's owned by the Ventura County Transportation Commission, it's owned by LA Metro, it's owned by OCTA, or it's owned by BNSF. So you've got 4 owners of a railroad corridor. You've got our structure running a railroad, and our job to maintain it. So we were formed 30 years ago. We were a startup. We still function in many ways just as we did 30 years ago as a startup. I don't know that any place should ever be exactly the way they were formed 30 years ago. I mean, we should mature and evolve. It's like, okay, I'm 30 years old. I'm still living at mom and dad's house. That kind of thing. And so when is the right time to look at how do we restructure this? And I think we're starting to approach that conversation because we have to deal with the challenges of efficiencies and funding, and it begs the question, are we set up right for the future?
Thank you, Darren. Going to try to get through some of these audience questions. So I'm going to combine 2 of them. The question starts: in the Netherlands, commuter rail has partnerships with e-bike lending libraries, so folks who use commuter rail don't need cars to get to the stations close to them. Would Metrolink ever consider doing something like this? And I'm going to combine it with another question. Is Metrolink considering cargo bikes and long tail bikes that are becoming popular, especially e-bikes that are longer, and reconfiguring trains so people can actually use those on board?
So to the first question, we would normally work with our member agencies. I use there's the old phrase, stay in your lane. My phrase is we stay in our train, because that's what we do. We work with the member agencies if they have something that, we want to work with them if they do those types of programs, we want to support it. To your second question, Michael, as we do our refurbishment, I see I ride our trains all the time. I see the bicycles that are on it. I've not seen capacity issues other than on, Cyclovia or something like that, where we've got massive interest in using bicycles. But if there's something that we should be paying more attention to, I'd like to know that, so we can make sure that, like I said, we're doing this major overhaul of our old fleet. And if we're not doing it for the current, what people are currently using as in the way of bicycles, we should be making adjustments. I've not seen that to be a problem yet. I haven't heard about it from our riders. And usually, since I do ride the train, if there's a problem, I normally do hear about it from our riders because they're not bashful.
Thank you. Next question, is Metrolink Wi-Fi in the works?
We explored Wi-Fi and this is another struggle I deal with our 5 member agencies who ultimately have to pay bills. And because again, as I said, we don't have our own dedicated revenue stream so that we could prioritize what's important to us. We have to work with the 5 counties. We did do some exploring of Wi-Fi. We found that the capital outlay to get Wi-Fi throughout our system was somewhere on the order of $17 million to do that throughout our system, with a $3 million annual cost associated with just having the service available. So when I tried to propose that, because it has been something we've heard from our customers, and we talked about it with the 5 member agencies, that was not something that at the time they were prepared to entertain. We have started looking for grants to help fund it in a different way, but at this point, through technology grants, that kind of thing, and unfortunately, we haven't been successful. So we're going to keep pursuing it. I've been surprised a little bit about the trepidation on, yeah, it costs money to have Wi-Fi on our trains, the service, but it is a customer service, and I think it will bring more people out on people knowing if they had that kind of service on trains, that is a customer experience opportunity, and we will continue to pursue it. It just has not been a high priority because of all those other factors.
Next question, has Metrolink explored land value capture as a revenue source? BART is building housing on land it owns, and rail agencies in Hong Kong and Japan get a substantial portion of the revenue through land leases.
Well, that's the other thing. Again, Metrolink doesn't own any land. All of the railroad corridors that we operate on are owned by others, and so LA Metro has, they've launched and initiated their program to try to put some more affordable housing in some of their on property that they own, but it isn't something that we have, we do just because we don't own property. We maintain the right of way, and even then, in most cases, we only maintain the portion of the property nearest to the railroad tracks. The outside shoulders of those corridors are maintained typically by the 5 county transportation agencies, what we call the outer 20. So it's not something that we've contemplated. BART's doing some cool things, Metro's doing some cool things, but since we don't own property, it's not an option for us.
Next question about frequency, and I know you touched on this a little bit. Someone says Metrolink every 15 minutes all day would change everything. And someone else was talking about how, trying to find the question. Can you work with LA Metro to fund and run all-day service to Cal State Northridge? So a lot of questions about just increasing frequency and not going around those commuter schedules. Could you speak to that a little more?
Well, I mentioned some of the things we're going to do with the Antelope Valley line. That's a start. I'm hoping that it really performs well so that we can go to other counties, the 5 counties in the system, and say, hey, this performs. We put service out there, people use it. One of the things, the Northridge question, the Ventura County line, the line that I ride most regularly, the line I ride all the time, it's my home line. It has the lowest service levels, partly because of just the Ventura County Transportation Commission not having the local revenue stream to help support it. LA Metro has the resources to do it. But what we're trying to do is a partnership with Losan. We talked about Losan earlier, Pacific Surfliner. It's not official yet, but I'm very confident that before the end of the year, you will be able to buy a Metrolink ticket at LA Union Station or anywhere on the Ventura County line, and you will be able to ride our train or the Pacific Surfliner train with our ticket. Right now, you can only use a couple of the Amtrak trains. So right now, there are 5 round trips all the way through Ventura. Only 2 of them are available to Metrolink train users. We will, by the end of the year, I believe we will have it. So all 5 round trips, as well as all of our own Metrolink trains, you'll be able to use just our ticket to use it. We're going to call it the Any Train program. You can take any train from LA to Ventura, whether it's a Metrolink train or an Amtrak train with a Metrolink ticket. And Amtrak Surfliner will honor it. That will increase some frequencies. I mean, it doesn't get us to 15-minute headways, 15-minute frequencies. We don't have the infrastructure to support that. We don't have the equipment to support that. We do hope with the SCORE program that we will be able to have 30-minute bi-directional frequencies, which is not bad by commuter rail or regional rail standards. To have, you know, if you're at a station and as much as every 30 minutes, a train goes by in either direction. So that will be huge. But again, what comes with that is the operating side. So we'll have this amazing capacity from an infrastructure, track, station platforms, all that. But then we have to cover the cost of operating. And that is, I don't say that we're not capital rich, we're capital comfortable. We're doing pretty well on the capital side, but the operating side, we are very much hand to mouth on the operating side. That makes it challenging.
Darren, I think we're at time. Is there any last words you'd like to leave our audience with?
No, I hope I've been able to address the questions, that you found it interesting. I hope you'll support some of the efforts that we have underway to try to change how we do our business, because we are going to be looking at some changes, and those changes, well, people are very accustomed to their train. And when we start making changes to schedules and some of these other things, all of a sudden their train may not be where it used to be. And so as we pivot to this regional rail model, just keep an eye out, and to the degree you can support our efforts as we look at changing our model, sure would appreciate it.
What's the number one thing our audience can do to support Metrolink other than ride it?
Write it, just write it. No, it's, I think it is, Michael, it is a matter of just getting the word out. I'm a lifelong Southern Californian, and if I hadn't been a user of our system, I don't know that I would have not thought I would have been wired to do it. Southern Californians aren't wired. The mass Southern Californians are not wired for taking transit and taking rail in particular. So I think this is going to be a culture shift for us. And so just making sure we talk about the fact that the train's there and does great things, gets you to places, that's really what I could ask for. Because we can't do we can do all the best marketing that our teams can do, but when at the end of the day, it's all about your voices, letting people know, hey, take the train.
Darren, thank you so much for your time. We're on time, so you could still catch your Metrolink, and you don't have to go on the competitor Amtrak.
That's okay. Like I said, the Amtrak had a bar car, but I do want to get home, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I appreciate your time. If there's anything, please. I'm probably as much of as accessible a CEO as you will find. Don't hesitate to email me. My team is great about making sure I get the information, and I will get back to you personally. So please don't ever hesitate to do that.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
All
Thanks
right,
for the time, Darren.
Yeah, no problem.